Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Building Drawing 101. This is a continuation of episode 7. Now, in the last episode, we constructed the roof plan. In this episode, we are going to now put on some of the labelings and symbols on the roof plan. Now, the first thing I like to do is to put on the layers, meaning the roof comes with layers, meaning when you're building the roof, after you have laid the frame, this is the timber framing plan of the roof plan. After you have installed that, you would now add the different layers that will cover the framing. And we all know that the final layer would be a roof tile, for example, or roof shingles. There are different layers, and I'm going to show you that those layers. Now, this is just one example. Different roof plans or different roofs are built with different layers. Now, the first layer for this specific roof plan will be what we refer to as the plywood sarking. Alright, I'm going to just draw the lines representing the different layers. I'm going to use the spline. This command here, spline. I'm going to start it somewhere here, and I'm going to just draw it in this manner. Alright, so that is the spline. And after I've done so, I'm going to trim off everything that is inside of the area that the spline is sealing off. So I'm deleting everything here in this region here. After I've done this, I'm going to draw a 45-degree line from this corner to touch here. So this is a layer that is covering the roof. This is a layer. This is a plywood, and it's covering the roof. After the plywood layer, we can use offset, and we can just click the distance inwards instead of typing a distance. Notice notice when I click the offset, it's asking me to specify a distance. Sometimes the type, we can actually select a distance. So from here to about here, and I'm going to do this. If you notice it is not complete, you can just simply extend the line by drawing extension lines, or you can even, I could have just used the spline command all over again, but I wanted it to somewhat have the same shape. Some persons would just use straight lines. It doesn't matter. I like to use the spline. Then we'll do that again. We'll offset the spline, and I can use the same distance as the last time. It doesn't matter, as long as it doesn't matter how the spline looks, as long as you get the 3 layers. In this situation, it's 3 layers. So this is the plywood layer, and on the plywood you put something that you call felt. Now this is a waterproofing material, so this prevents water from seeping through the cracks and through the plywood into the building. And then after that plywood sarking layer, you would have your roof tile on top of that, and the roof tile adds beauty to the roof. It also does a job in preventing the water, allowing the water to run off properly. So I am going to go ahead and label these layers, and in addition to labeling these layers, I'm going to label some critical members of the roof. So I'm going to use the multi-leader M-leader command right here. On your AutoCAD it may be somewhere else, but you should be able to find it. So I'm going to label this layer first. And if you have not yet set up your leader style, you can do that. You can do that by watching a video. I have a video in CAD 101 in my CAD 101 series about setting up dimensions and leaders. for labeling. So this layer is the roof tile. So I can pull this out. I can simply just copy this and change the name. So this is felt, and it's on the sarking. So I'm going to say felt on the sarking. Then I'm going to copy this down again, and I'm going to call this plywood sarking. Now I'm going to specify the type of plywood or the size plywood, because you have different sizes. So 16 millimeter, in brackets I'm going to put 5/8 of an inch. So the thickness of the plywood sarking is this. So 16 millimeters or 5/8 inch thick plywood sarking. So the sarking, this is called the sarking, and it's made of plywood. So those are the 3 layers. And I'm going to put these in the dimension line layer. I have a layer for dimensioning. Alright, now before we go any further, I'm going to hatch the different layers so that you can tell them apart. So the plywood is basically a flat. You can use, if you can find a way, you have certain hatches that you can use to indicate timber, but you can leave it blank. So I'm going to leave it blank. I'm going to use label this layer. Now the reason why you're seeing this as concrete, that's because that's the last layer I used. So I'm going to open the library, and I'm going to search for the roof tile arch, and by default it is facing downwards. I want it to face 90 degrees. It's facing south, so I want it to face east, because this roof is sloping east. So there you go. I'm going to hatch here again, and this is now facing east, because the last hatch I used, it was at east. So I'm going to turn it 180 degrees so that it can face north. By default it is facing south, so if you rotate it 90 degrees, it's going to now face east, 180 degrees north, 270 degrees west. So it's now where I want it. I'm going to change this layer to the green layer, because I want it, the green layer is what I use for my roof. And then the felt, you can use something to show variation. It's not so important what you use, but I want to use something that is close enough. Once you don't use something that can be identified as something else, I like to use let me use this. And if you notice it's showing as a solid hatch, you just need to increase the scale. Alright, I may want to choose something else. Let me stick with this. Let me carry this up to 200 in terms of the hatch scale. Alright, so that I can work with that. I'm going to ensure that it is also in the roof layer. I'm going to use the same hatch, but this time around I'm going to change the angle to 90. Alright, and that will work. Alright, so that's the 3 layers on the roof. Alright, so I can go ahead now and label the parts of the roof. I'm going to label, in the labeling of the parts, you also indicate the sizes of the members, so that the person, the contractor, or the person who is responsible for purchasing the material can know the size materials to purchase. Well, that message will be communicated by the person constructing the house. So this is a ridge board, and the size is, in this case, 250 millimeters by, and that is the length and the the width and the thickness, the length varies. 50 millimeters thick ridge board. So that's the name of this member. And the ridge board is the part of the roof that supports the rafters. It's at the apex of the roof. It acts as the spine of the roof. Alright, I'm going to also label now this member. And this member right here is a crown rafter. The crown rafter, if you notice, there's a triangle forming here. The crown rafter is a rafter that sits between two hip rafters. So it's 45 degrees to the hip rafters, to two adjacent hip rafters. And it spans from the fascia board here, or the eave. The eave is the overhang, to the top of the roof, to the ridge board. And the size of this, 150, and the width is the same. So you call this crown rafter. The next rafter that is there is the hip rafter. And this is the hip rafter. And it's the same size as the crown rafter, so I'll just change the name to hip. Sometimes it's larger, but in this case, alright. So the next thing that I need to label is a jack rafter. Now the jack rafter protrudes from a hip rafter. Notice it's touching, all the jack rafter is touching the hip rafter and not the ridge. So this is a jack rafter. You have jack rafters that also touch the valley rafter, and spans to the eave or the fascia board. Then you have jack rafters that they span from hip to valley. Cripple jack rafters rather, that span from hip to valley. There are no valley rafters in this specific roof design. In subsequent videos, those will be demonstrated. Let me see if I'm missing out anything. Oh yes, the fascia board or the fascia board. I've heard different pronunciations, but I pronounce it fascia board. So this board here, the 200 millimeters by 25, and these measurements that I'm putting in, they are pretty standard, but they are not mandatory, meaning the measurements can be determined by the builders as long as they are appropriate. So this is fascia or fascia board. Some persons just say fascia, others put fascia board. Alright, in addition to labeling the members, you have to show the span that you're working with. Alright, so let me find the center of one of the rafters. Since the rafters are 50 millimeters thick, I'm going to offset 25 to find the center of this one. Let me not use this one. Let me use two of the common raft. Oh, I've labeled the common raft. This is a common rafter. These that span from the ridge board to the fascia board. They are not sandwiched by, well, they're sandwiched by two hip rafters, but not in this way at the triangle here. So I'm going to label that shortly. But let me go ahead and offset two of the common rafters. 25 to find back the center. Let me do this one, and I am going to actually measure from the center of one to the center of the other. This is the measurement that is used to offset the rafters, and the builder needs to know that to know how to space the rafters. I'm going to put this in dimension lines, and what I would normally do is copy this dimension from here to here to here. You don't need to show it right throughout. Oh, this one is a bit different. because it's at the center, so sometimes that happens. But the general spacing is 600 millimeters. I don't really have to show the spacing for every single one. Alright, so let me show you the common rafter now. I have to do a bit of alterations to the labeling lines, and I'll do so. I have to get this to point downwards. I have to also, hold on, let me mirror this. This can be a bit cumbersome at times. Alright, there we go. So this is a common rafter that it's pointing on. And that is the size for the common rafter. So they would know what size boards to buy. And the length will vary, as you can see. The length of the rafters are varied, so you have to measure the rafters before you go ahead and purchase the board. Alright, so now that we have labeled the rafter, I'm going to now go ahead and draw the gutter. So I'm going to, I should have done this before I started labeling from the previous video. The gutter, I'm going to offset 100 millimeters. That is if your roof has a gutter. If your roof has a gutter, normally when you're sitting your CXE exams and you're required to draw a roof plan, they normally ask for a gutter. Let me fix this up. Alright, let me offset. And in this case, the gutter goes all around the building based on the fact that the water will flow in 4 directions. So I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste, because I'm going to now indicate the gutter. And 100 millimeters is the thickness of this gutter, or the diameter of the gutter pipes. Right, so that is the gutter. And there are times when you would need to also indicate the points where the down pipe, because once you have a gutter, you have to have pipes taking the water out of the gutter downwards to the ground. So you can put a radius, doesn't matter. Let me put 50, 100 millimeter down pipe. So PVC down pipe. I'm specifying the material. I'm going to also do it for the gutter. The gutter can also be made from a thin metal, but PVC has proven to be a very viable option. You can place the gutters at different points on the building. Alright, so one of the last thing that we would need to indicate is the flow of the water. So you can just simply do an arrow like this. So on this side of the roof, the water will flow this way. On this side, the water will flow that way. So you can simply put arrows like this, but I like to be a bit more stylish. Let me leave this arrow for now. Let me show you what I would normally do. I would normally draw an arrow after I draw the arrow. or normally hatch the arrow. And this hatch I would normally use a solid hatch. Alright, I'm going to convert this into the roof layer that I've been using. And then I am now at liberty to rotate this and place it where I want it. I can now mirror this to the other side. And then I can now mirror this to the other side. As you can see, you can, whatever method works for you, you can take it, you can rotate it, then you move it to wherever you want it. So I will no longer be needing this. If you need to do it in a hurry, then you can do this. Alright, so basically this is showing the flow of the water as it runs off. So the water that is if rain is falling on this side of the roof, it will flow in this part of the gutter. Right here it will flow in this part of the gutter. At this side it will flow in this part of the gutter, and at this side it will flow in this part of the gutter. Alright, so the last thing I'm going to do before I declare this roof plan finished is to actually add the name of the plan. I'm going to use the M text to label the plan. So that's roof plan, and enter. Then I'm going to put the scale. Normally you put the roof plan to a scale of 1:50. That's the most common scale. It can be 1:100, 1:75, depending on the size of the building. In most cases is 1:50 or 1:75 rather. It's really 1:100. It's not recommended unless the building is very large and the paper that you're printing on is very small. I normally edit the scale size to be smaller, like the writing, the labeling scale, and I normally underline the title of the plan. So this is basically it. This is how to label and dimension your roof plan. Oh, there's one thing that I've missed out, and this is very critical. I need to show the overhang. So this is the overhang, not to the gutter, to here, 450 millimeters, and you can pull these down to the edge after you have made the measurement. So this is how much the roof hangs off the walls of the building, and you can simply label this and call it overhang. Alright, so I'm going to just be lazy here, explode this so that this is separate. So now I can delete this, and I can now rename and call this overhang. Let me center it so that it looks neater. And there you have it. You can just put this at one point on the roof. You don't have to put it everywhere, because they will just assume that the entire roof, as it is safest to use the same overhang throughout the roof. There are situations where you can use different overhangs for different parts, but for the most part it is the safest. Alright, in terms of constructing the roof, in terms of drawing the roof rather. So there you have it. Labeling and dimensioning a roof plan, showing some features of the roof plan. I hope you have learned what was taught in this lesson. And please like, share, and subscribe if you have not yet done so, so you can and pass on the knowledge. Have a good day.